the one thing I will say about Trump is that he definitely appears to be playing 4D chess. For months now, everybody's been saying, I don't know, the narco-terrorism piece, this doesn't make sense, seems like it's oil. Meanwhile, this guy has clearly been planning this for months, as he stated. I want to look at that piece real quick.
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen, Mike? I mean, we had 150 plane or air vehicle helicopters, armada, and CIA intelligence and Delta Force. Come on. I mean, how intricate was this? Are you surprised? Because I'm under the impression that Russia provided security for this guy, that Cuban intelligence provided support and cover for this guy. I mean, this has got to be an operation of a magnitude we maybe saw with only bin Laden?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, there's no doubt that that this was a well done operation. I would go, let me just go back to the comment you made about the 4D chess being played by President Trump in the White House. I would agree with that. I would say that's correct if what's been going on have been these backroom discussions with people like Cabello or Pedrino or Rodriguez or others to lock down or set the table for what comes next. If that's not the case, and they don't have sort of an understanding, they don't have a deal or negotiations done that says, okay, this is where we're going with this. We're going to grant you amnesty. You're going to, allow Gonzalez to come in, the opposition that won the election. You're going to guarantee that the military and security apparatus will back that move. All of that, if that was happening, sure, great. You played 4D chess. If not, you're kind of winging it. So, but as far as the operation goes, look, yeah, great, amazing, right? The intel that was provided. Anytime you have something like this, where you've got a high value target in a difficult operational environment, you better hope you've got a recruited asset or assets with access who can provide you with insight into that target's activities, their movements, their daily patterns of activity, behavior, mindset, associates that they're dealing with, what their security element looks like. You've got to get, and that's what you want. You want somebody or persons inside the inner circle, right, who are in the tent, who can tell you with some certainty, right, and they're credible sources of information. That then gives you, when you're doing the risk versus gain calculation as to whether you're going to pull the trigger on this thing, that gives you the comfort and the ability to say, yeah, we believe we've covered this down, right? Because it's not like the movies or the beach books. You're not a cowboy out there winging it, hoping it works. You're talking about people's lives, right? And so you want to have this as locked down as possible. And so that's where the intel comes into play. So for several months, and Trump was fairly clear about this back in August. He said he's authorized the CIA to conduct covert activities in Venezuela. Nobody really knew what that meant. It may well have meant that, we had personnel in there conducting surveillance, signals intercepts, gathering intel, drone operations, whatever, pulling together this picture of Maduro and how this military operation could be conducted. And then you bring in Delta, which, again, talk about quality and the best of the best. These guys, amazing, supported by what's known as the 160th, the Night Stalkers. I had the privilege of looking at some of their stuff up close, and it's amazing, right? It really is incredible. But it's all based on how good is that intelligence, how good is your homework before you rock up on that site, right? So it was similar to, as you pointed out, Abbottabad and bin Laden. And so again, full marks to them for making this happen. That again, I get it. Isolationists, non-interventionists, they'll roll their eyes and go, "Oh my God, you warmonger! I can't believe you've done this." I'm just saying, look, the operation from an operational perspective was spot
Of
on.
course.
Right? I'm
Yeah.
also, I'm also saying, because we don't know, we're speculating to do what degree they've set the table for what happens next. If it wasn't set,
Uh-huh.
you know, uh, you don't want to
You
discount how
know,
difficult this could be.
hey ladies, it's Jillian here, and let's just say that when it comes to intimate wear, the struggle is real. For many of us, bras and underwear are just afterthoughts, basic, uncomfortable, and honestly, underwhelming. And for years, I'd focus on my outfits, thinking the right top or the right pants would make me feel great, but Skims has flipped that script. Now, the foundation pieces I put on first set the tone for my wardrobe. Confidence and comfort all day long. The Fits Everybody Scoop bralette is just what it says. It fits every body type and it's a game changer. It's supportive, it's comfortable, and even if you have a bigger bust, which I unfortunately do not, but even if you do, it feels like a perfect fit, not a constricting sports bra. Skims is just designed differently. Quality fabrics, quality construction, soft and seamless support. You feel secure, lifted, and still totally natural. No digging, no adjusting. Skims is now just a wardrobe essential for me, and I'm sure it will be for you too. So you can shop my favorite bras and underwear at skims.com/Jillian. And after you place your order, please be sure to let them know that we sent you. Select podcast in the survey and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. See, you talk about if he's playing 4D chess, he would have had what happens next in Venezuela ironed out. But then you think about the fact that if he had tried to do that, he would have given away the operation, I'm imagining. So he probably couldn't have. On one hand, he said that Rodriguez was cooperating. And then she turns around and goes, there's one leader of Venezuela and it's Maduro, return him. And I'm thinking, like, blink twice if you're signaling to Russia and China. Like, are you cooperating with us and playing a double game because you don't know how it's going to play out? So you want Iran and Russia and China to think that you're on their side. But it is kind of scary with regard to the fact that there is no plan. And he gives us these vagaries that upset the shit out of everybody. Of like, we're going to run Venezuela. And it goes back to that conversation you and I had previously of the way he communicates these things does not do him any favors. I want to look at the international piece here because you sent me some homework and I did it. So I want to go country by country. Cuba. Mike, honestly, Cuba. I thought, like, who gives a shit about Cuba? I don't mean to be a jerk, but in other words, like, there's not gold, right? There's not rare earth. There's not oil. This has been going, we don't care about Cuba for those reasons, but that's not true. And so Cuba was providing a security apparatus for Venezuela. Like, can you explain the role that Cuba plays and what's going to happen next for Cuba? Because it seems like Rubio has got to be in his bonnet about it, understandably so, being Cuban himself. But what's the Cuba thing here?
Right. Yeah, the Cuban thing is fascinating. Look, nothing happens in a bubble, right? Because the world always seems to be shrinking. So everything's interconnected. I will say, just to something you had mentioned before that, though, they could have been having conversations with people like Rodriguez, and some others without tipping off the operational aspects of a possible move on Maduro, right? Because they've been doing that for some time. They laid out a $50 million bounty for information leading to Maduro's arrest, right? So it was clear that the U.S. wanted him. They've had an indictment out there in 2020, as a matter of fact. So I mean, this is not, that would not have been new. You would have had to be delicate conversations for sure, but those things could have been taking place. And then also, again, if hopefully, you've got recruited assets inside that organization somewhere, you're getting some corroborating information, or you're getting some insight into who to approach, who might be, interested in a conversation, looking for a possible way out. So those things could have been taking place. Setting that aside, Cuba exists, to the degree that it does, and still functions in large part because of Venezuelan support, and in large part because of Venezuelan energy that they've been receiving at enormously discounted prices. in exchange sometimes for Cuban support, providing doctors, intel support, security support. So
Okay.
Cuba's very concerned right now about what may happen, right? And why do we care about Cuba? Well, kind of the old Cold War reasons. We were concerned about Cuba in the old days because they were playing with Russia, and we did not want Russia in our backyard. That
Mm-hmm.
basically still exists today. China's been, messing around inside Cuba for a while. Communications stations, surveillance opportunities. So that's kind of why.
Right.
It's not because we're
Uh-huh.
you want to be pragmatic about why the U.S. does anything and why any nation does anything anyway, right? Every nation should be acting in its own best interest. That's just the way the world works. Again, people will get all up in arms. Some folks on the progressive side and say, no, we should be a community of nations. They're not living in the real world.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And make sure to let me know what guests you want to see on in the future.